So imagine we have a start date and we have a number of days that we predict a job is going to take for us to do. Now we also need to take into account we're not going to work on holidays and we're not going to work on the weekends, for example. What is going to be the end date? Well, in this tutorial, we are going to find out how to do that in JavaScript. So let's get started. So the first thing we'll do is just get a sample test function running first. So we'll say function, we'll call it runsies. And this will just be our main run function. And it's going to hold in all our variables and then run our function that's going to do what we want it to do. As you can see over the right hand side here, I've already got 3 samples of data. In the blue is going to be the work range. We need to try and figure out this work range. So we'll know the number of days and we'll know the start date, but we don't know when it's actually going to end. So this will be a bit of forward thinking, but we'll be trying to determine this. Now, in between some of these dates are holidays, and one of the holidays actually lands on a weekend here. So we needed to account for that. And then these weekends too, we won't be working. So we need to account for those as well. So we'll need a holidays array. We'll also need a weekends array, and then we'll need our sample data for these 3 examples. So let's go ahead and make those. So first one is going to be our holidays. So we'll say const holidays equals, and that's going to be an array. Okay, so our array here is like this. First one, we have just a rando holiday we've added in. So the 15th of September. So we're doing it in the nerdy date format for tech geeks, starting with the year, month, and day, but we could change this around to accommodate other date formats. And then we've got the 31st of the 10th, 2024. My wife has always been petitioning for Halloween to be a holiday, so I have to add that in there. Then we've got Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then New Year's Day. All right, cool. And you can see them appear here. So we've got the 15th up here. Then we've got the 31st in this sample, 24th, 25th, and 1st in this sample here. Okay, so then the weekends, so we'll say const weekends is going to equal. Now, we could say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then handle for the word days, but we know that JavaScript uses the US format where Sunday is the start of the week, unlike in Australia where Monday is the start of the week. And that start of the week starts with 0 for Sunday and then ends on 6 for Saturday. So if we want Sunday and Saturday to be off, we can put in the numbers 0, 6 in an array, and then search through to make sure that we're not landing on those arrays to get our end date. Next, let's put in our sample data or our sample ranges. So this is going to be equal to an array of objects. So in each array, we'll have an object that contains a start date. And our first one's going to be 2024 what is it? 10. So the 9th of the 10th, 040910. And then in this time, in this example, we are having a number of work days. So we'll say work days going to equal walk days. Work days, here we go, is going to equal 10. Nice. And we need to do that 3 more times. Okay, so our next start date here is going to be the 26th here. So we'll say and that's 26th of October, 26. And how many days? Let's say 5 for this one. And then the next one is going to start on the 22nd here of December, 1, 2. So the 22nd December 2024. And let's run this one for 16 days and make sure we get over to the new year. All right, so we've got our sample data sorted out. Cool. Now we're going to send this off to our function that we're going to use to generate our end date. So let's say const, and we'll say our response array. That's what we're going to return, and then we'll run the function. So let's call it getWordayEndDate. Okay, so we've got our getWorkdayEndDate function here, which we'll create in a moment. And let's have that return an array of dates matching each one of these days. So what we might do is just quickly create the skeleton for this function. Let's do that up here, getWorkdayEndDate. And what do we need? So we're going to need this sample here. We're going to need this sample here. We'll call this workdays. Then we'll need the weekends. then we'll need the holidays. And let's just do some JS documentation here. And what's it going to do? It's going to get the end date for each workday in the workdays array. And what is this going to be? So that workdays is going to be an object array. And then that's going to have, so what's in that object array? So let's put 2 more down here. It's going to contain our start date as a string. So workdays dot start date. And then we want a number. And that workdays dot workdays. Then our weekends are going to be an array of numbers. And our holidays are going to be an array of strings. All right, so we've got that there. Let's head back down to our test. And so we'll need to add in our samples. And then it's what's up next is our weekends and then our holidays. And then once we get that data, we're going to map it and put it back into this sample here as the end date. And then we'll console table that. So let's go samples.map sample. And this time around, we also want the index. So IDX. So we'll need to put that in a bracket on its own. So we'll need to encapsulate that, create an arrow function, and that's going to get the sample object as it iterates through and adds in a end date that is equal to the response array in the position of the index, right? Because that return index is going to always match the length of the sample. And then we will return the sample. Okay. And finally, we will console.log. Oh, no, we won't. We'll go fancy. We'll console.table sample. So it should look pretty. Okay. Let's head up to our main engine and reason for this tutorial. Okay, so the first thing we need to do in here is to get an entire day in milliseconds because we'll be iterating through an entire day, right? And we want to convert everything into milliseconds and then check each day to see if it's either a weekend, holiday, or not. So let's create a variable constant called day milliseconds is equal to, and 24 hours in a day times 60 minutes in an hour times 60 seconds in a minute times 1000 milliseconds in a second. And then we're going to get dates in UTC format, which will convert our dates into milliseconds, but it will also avoid daylight saving time issues when we're returning our dates. So let's go ahead and create a internal method for that, a little private method called getUTC. And that's going to just take a date. Okay, so what's that date going to be? So it's in a date format, not a strict JS doc format, but that's fine. And it's going to get the UTC date for the current day, or date, I guess. And it's going to return a number, which it will be the UTC date in milliseconds. Excellent. So how do we do that? So we say const date, and we'll convert that to DT, is equal to we'll create a new date here, new date with the current date in it. So it could be any date. We haven't figured that out yet, but there's probably going to be a date string. And now we're going to return the date to UTC, so date UTC, and that's going to take 3 things: the year, the month, and the day. No hours, minutes, or milliseconds. So that will be dt.get full year of the current date, then dt.get month, and then dt.get date, not get days, it's days of the week. All right, so we've got this handy little internal private UTC tool. If you're using a getUTC more often, maybe you want to put it into a utilities file or something like that. But if you're copying and pasting this into different projects, it's probably a good idea to keep it in this little private method here for you. Next, we want to convert our holidays into UTC format. So now we're going to make use of this getUTC here. So we'll say const holidays UTC is equal to, then we're going to get the holidays and map them. So map, so it means iterating through each one and returning a value for each iteration. Holiday and little arrow function here. And what do we want to do? We want to say get UTC holiday. Okay, so on each iteration of these holidays here, it'll grab this text, convert it to a new date, and then grab that date, full year, month, and date, and then return it as a UTC format in milliseconds. So we test that with a console log. Holiday UTC. Run and debug. Let's have a look at our debug here. And oh, we haven't run anything yet. Let's go down to runsies. And we will execute runsies. See what happened here. Uncaught error. Oh, samples not defined because this one is samples. Okay. All right, fix that one up. 5. Okay, here we go. So this is not going to work because we haven't returned anything yet, but now you can see these holidays are correct in our format. Cool. All right. So now that we have our day in milliseconds and our holidays, we can now iterate through our work days here. So let's create a variable called const and dates. And they're going to be equal to workdays dot, and we're going to map each of the work days. And so for each work day, little arrow function again, what are we going to do? So the first thing we need to do is get the day of the year as a number. So we could say const day start is equal to, and we're going to use the get UTC again, get UTC, and remember workday dot start date here. So remember workday start date. So next we're going to loop through our remaining days, and if a day lands on a day that isn't a holiday or weekend, we're going to take one away from those number of remaining days that we have in our work days. So let's create a few variables that will change here as we walk through our iterations. So we'll say let day of week equal new date. And that new date is going to be workday dot start date. And here we just want to get the day. So get day. So this is going to return the current day of the week for this start date. The very first start date for this example is going to return a Tuesday, so it'd be 0, 1, 2. So that will return 2. Okay, so next we'll have days remaining. So let days remaining equal workday, and that'll be our work days. And in our first iteration, that's going to be 10, 5 for the next start date, and 16 for the following start date. So that's what it'll start on, but these will change as we loop through, right? And then let day equal day start. Cool. I guess we could do a little test. So we could console log day of week, days remaining, day start. Hit F5, see what happens. Okay, cool. So for each one, we've got starts on 2, which is correct. 0, 1, 2. This one, next one starts on 6, is 5 days, and that's the date in milliseconds. We start on a Sunday here for our last one, which is correct here. And this one's a Saturday. Yep, that's correct. Okay, cool. Everything is hunky-dory there. Awesome. Okay, so let's just comment that one out for now. Comment this one out for now. We don't need it. So now let's use a while loop, and we'll say while there are days remaining, So while the days remaining is greater than 0, we want to count the days, right? So first we need to check if it's not a weekend or a holiday. So check. And we can do that by saying if it's not a weekend, so if our current day of the week here doesn't match our weekend array, wherever I've hidden that here, weekends here, then it's going to be a workday. So we could say weekends, and we can use the includes, the JavaScript includes method here. So if it doesn't include day of week, and we use doesn't by using the exclamation mark at the front, and if holidays UTC, and we don't want it to be in that either, so exclamation mark includes day, so the current day, then what do we want to do? We want to reduce the days of remaining, so days remaining. So we're going to take one away from the days remaining. And also, if the days remaining equal 0, then we want to break here. Why do we want to break here? Why should we add this in? Well, down below, we're going to do a couple of updates to these variables here. And if we don't break at this point, then they'll be updated before we can report them to the end of the date, right? So we put that in there as our break. Okay. So now let's do our updates to day. So day is updated. So the day plus equals the day in milliseconds. So we want to add a whole day in milliseconds back to things. Remember, we created that back up here. So we need to find the next day of the week. So the next day of the week is a little bit different. Here we're going to say if the day of the week, so we're using a ternary operator here. So it's sort of an inline if statement. If the day of the week plus 1, so it's the next day of the week, question mark. So if, sorry, plus 1 equals 7, so it's exceeding our day of the week range. Remember, it goes from 0 through to 6, question mark. Then we want to go all the way back to 0. Otherwise, it's the day of the week plus 1, right? And it's not just a single end date, that's end dates. So let's make end dates plural here. And that will then also allow us to say, okay, we've done our counting for our end dates. This will allow us to get our end date that includes the weekends and holidays. So our new date is going to be the final day that we iterate through. So then we can say const end date is equal to new date, and that's going to be the day. Great. And then we can console log that just to test day. End date. And we'll just see how we go from here. So a little F5 action. Scroll up. All right, so the first end date is going to be the 23rd. So let's have a look here on our test sheet here. So 23rd, correct. The next one is going to be on the 4th. Yep, 4th is correct. And the last date is going to end on the 16th, and that's also correct. Cool. All that's left for us to do is to convert this back to the format that we started with, which is this, which just happens to be an ISO date format. So what we'll do here is say return end date, and let's convert that to ISO string. But the ISO string date is also going to report some other weird stuff, which would be the time as well. We don't want the time, but we know that this type of string has 10 characters in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's just substring the first part of that string. So we'll say sub string, starting in position 0 and ending 10. Cool. And then we'll return this final end dates. Hit save. Let's see how we go. Oh, something naughty happened here.
Now you've been a bad boy.
Maybe so.
Oh, I is not defined because it's the index. Yep, that's going to be samples. Control C, Control V. Oh, it's a big samples. Hit save. 5 again. There it is. Did it at last after all our testing. So what's happened? So our first iteration, we've got the 10th of September, 24 for 10 work days. And so it starts here, goes all the way through the 23rd. So the blues should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But it's actually running for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 days. And finishing on the 23rd. And then we've got the 26th of the 10th for 5 days. Finishes on the 4th of 11th. Let's do another sample here. It starts on the 26th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 whole days, including weekends and holidays. And then we've got the Christmas period starting on the 22nd and the 12th and ending on the 16th of the 1st with the breaks and weekends in the between. Okay, so that's how we calculate the work date, end date in JavaScript. In the next tutorial, we're going to do something very similar and we're going to get a range. So we'll have our start date here and end date here, and we'll want to work out the number of work days within that range. So hit that notification bell for when the next tutorial comes out. And if you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe. Until next time.